Hello. Hi, everybody. Crypto Talk with Brianna and Scott. Brianna, how you doing today?
Scott, I'm great. A lot to unpack today. Thank you for stemming my coffee addiction, holding up your Starbucks cup. Now I'm needing a cup of coffee. But no, I'm looking forward to today's. I'm really looking forward to today's talk. How are you?
I'm good. I've got my mint mocha from Starbucks. They just, at least in Montana, they just brought out the Christmas stuff yesterday. And as you know, I'm a Starbucks aficionado. Pretty much go there every day, and I've got to have my coffee. And I had my first mint mocha latte yesterday. Put me in a great spirit. It's snowing out here, so I'm in a super good mood today, and also very excited about our talk today. At first it's going to be about regulation, but I think we're going to make it interesting. And I had a lot of fun actually researching a pretty dry topic, but the way we're going to do it today, I think, is going to bring some interesting, hopefully some levity. And we got a super interesting guest today that's going to give us amazing perspective, and really excited to have our guest on today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest today?
Absolutely. Today we have Dr. Scott Herman, who is an Air Force veteran who studied cryptographic analysis at the National Security Agency. Thank you for your service. He then went on to college to receive his doctorate from Northwestern University, and after 30 years, recently retired from practice. He started trading in the stock market and eventually found his passion in decentralized finance. Dr. Scott Herman, thank you for being here today. We're happy to have you.
And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys on the show. I always look forward to it.
Nice. Yeah. This has been fun. We have, as some of our viewers know, probably most of them actually, most of us all met in the London Real DeFi Academy. And we have just really had such a great time bonding, and everybody in that community who loves crypto and all sorts of varying degrees of how long they've been in crypto, how much they've been into crypto, from brand newbies to people that have been into it for a long, long time. Our fearless leader, Brian Rose, is a great teacher. And, it's interesting because he recommended and encouraged all of us to get out of our comfort zone and to get out there and to talk about it and to have podcasts and to have YouTube channels, whatever. And so the three of us have all embraced this here, and I know Dr. Scott here is really embracing it. He's in a brand new studio. He's got his cool looking headphones. I mean, you're ready to go, Scott.
Yeah, I've been working on it. It's an enjoyable working environment. I'll put it that way. So looking forward to this and eventually coming out of my closet, we'll say, into my own space, and looking forward to having you as a guest on my podcast as well.
Yeah.
So what goes
Awesome.
around
Awesome.
comes around.
Yeah, and in a good way. In a good way, this way.
Always, yeah.
Yeah. So the topic today, it's interesting. We're going to talk about regulation, but we're going to do it from kind of a unique perspective, I think. This started off with a paper that Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX, put out this blueprint, basically, talking about the crypto regulations and his view. And this is my opinion of what it is, and you guys may have it different, but it's his view on what he thought some of these regulations should look like. And he got a lot of pushback from the crypto community, which, it should be expected. He expects it. And but how I found out about it was I listened to the Bankless podcast and watched their YouTube videos quite a bit. And they had both Sam on and Eric Voorhees. How do you pronounce his name? It's Voorhees, or I don't know.
That's
good. Voorhees, yeah. He is the CEO of a company called, I have it written down here.
Shapeshift.
It's Shapeshift, yeah. And which is also, and again, you guys may know a little bit more. I've heard of him before, but I didn't know really what he did. But I did read a little bit that Shapeshift is an exchange, but it works a little differently. I think it was starting out to be mostly decentralized, but then they had some regulations in New York and so on, which they talk about. Interestingly, they had these two guests on to debate the topics. And basically, Eric had put out some comments, on Twitter, disagreeing with Sam in certain places. And so they got them together and discussed it. And I thought it was a great discussion. It's kind of funny, interesting to see your guys' take on it. I thought it was really interesting and informative in lots of different ways. And I haven't even finished the end of it. And you guys were saying that the end is really good. So kind of anxious to hear about that. But let me get let's do it this way. Let me get your take in general, both of you, on what you thought. And then what I thought we'd do is I would walk through each piece of his blueprint and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about our ideas, what we thought about it. I wrote copious notes on each section about some of the things that he said or in the blueprint, and then my general ideas. So if that sounds good, first let's just go with what was your general, did you have fun doing this? Was it interesting? Just your general overall. Brianna, let's start with you.
Okay, there was so much there. And I've been diving into regulations myself, but I haven't been following what Sam SBF, I'm going to try to say it as that. I haven't been following what he's been proposing or what he's been talking about. And I really haven't heard him speak at all. I know who he is. And I also don't follow the cashless guys, but I really enjoyed their perspective on this. So I guess I'll kind of walk through.
I like that.
Bankless,
Cashless, bankless. It's all the same.
I know. I've actually done back in my head. Like, which one is it? Same thing. Okay, so I guess I'll go through kind of the order of business for me. I read through the white paper first, or the proposal framework from from Sam.
Sam. How about Sam? Yeah.
Sam. Let's go with Sam. Okay, so I read through that first, and I would like to share when we get to that kind of my reaction, because I did find a reaction that was really fitting to what my initial, as I started to read, there was some really interesting ideas in there that I thought were really, really good in specific areas. And as I was reading it, I was really appreciating Sam's, he makes a point to be like, this is nothing set in stone here. These are just some of my ideas. How can we all work together? Kind of like I'm open to hearing what everybody thinks. What do you guys all think about this? So I really appreciate that because it's just something that I just want, I hope can maintain in crypto in general is let's all work together and, come up with ideas and not just have one person kind of take over and um, decide what's going to be best for everyone. And so I read through all of the white paper and I kind of did the same thing, Scott. I took notes on different areas. And I appreciated the way that he drew out these are kind of the different options that we have. We have A, B, C, and why, which ones would work for some or not work for others, and we'll get to all of that. And then, as I'm reading it as well, there's a lot of compromises that you're starting to kind of see, and that's where once I started to watch the Bankless, Bankless podcast with him, which again I appreciated just hearing those perspectives in a cordial way where they can share their own opinions and views and not have it get too heated. And actually was really productive, that whole conversation. I also learned a lot too. I learned a lot about how actually regulated the crypto industry is, which we always hear. And I'm sure I've said it myself that it's unregulated, unknowingly saying that. So that was interesting. But then I kind of started to see as time went on within that talk, I started to see a transparency on one side that continued on. And that's kind of where I saw with Eric kind of representing this is what the premise is of DeFi, what the premise is of all of this. And this is what we really need to agree that this is why it's here is because it's permissionless. It's trustless, it's all kind of running as it should be. It's immutable. Why touch that? And then it started to get a little bit blurry. I felt like with Sam's end, as I was, and more compromises kind of coming in on Sam's end as well. And then I realized while I was watching this that when I was reading the white paper of Sam's, I was even compromising in my mind. Okay, yeah, we have to play by these rules. I guess we'll take the best that we can here. When I feel once I watched Eric, I was really happy to see that perspective. As in, no, this is the reason that we have this is created in the first place. We need to hold strong to these values and these beliefs, and ideas, and create this opportunity for the whole world. While it's still here, before we.
Oh, she's gone. She got the hook. I didn't know.
You pressed the button, Scott.
I might have said, okay, you're done. No. All right, she's calling back in. Hold on here. That's never happened to us before. That's
And
the first
we're
time that's
live.
happened. So I promise I did not censor you, Brianna.
Do you know that you were cut off there, Brianna?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you were gone. You were totally gone. Now you're back.
Okay, because my screen is frozen, but I can hear you guys. You guys are just frozen, so
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure how.
Well, oh, she's gone again. Oh, wow. All right. Well, I guess that's a hint, Scott, that you're up. So, what was your interpretation in general?
Okay, well, I want to start by giving the viewers a little bit of the backstory before we go further into this. And
Sure.
what obviously the premise of this is on the regulation of DeFi. And hi, Brianna.
I'm
And
back.
and so right now there's currently two bills in the Senate for regulation for crypto. And so these are going back and forth, back and forth. And so Sam on his own came out with a paper from the DeFi perspective of people that are involved in DeFi versus the legislation of the feds, etc. And I give him kudos for doing that. I think I've said this all along in our class that we need to stand up and say and have our input into this. And all I'm seeing is legislation from the feds and no input. So when I saw this, I was so impressed and so happy to see that. So kudos to him. And then Eric, like Eric, kind of the Monday morning quarterback kind of thing, because Sam put his paper out there, so Eric got to react to it, and other people acted nefariously to it. But I give credit to Eric for thanking Sam for putting this out there, because Sam is on the forefront, and somehow because of the, I think, because of the size of his exchange and him being with FTX, his exchange, he is more tied into the people that be in the feds than Eric is. And Eric has quite a stance and a history in that when New York State came out with their regulations, this 60-page document of regulations, Eric said, forget that, and just backed out of New York. So he has definitive principles and standards, um, and what he wants to interact with and moving forward. And he is, I will call, like a maximalist. He is not going to
Yeah.
cross that line, and more power to him.
Yeah.
So that being said, I hope that kind of sets the
Yeah.
groundwork for where we are going forward.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Let me just add a couple of things because I just wanted to, and I wrote these down because, it's like acronym soup or whatever. But the two laws that Scott was referring to, you've got the DCCPA, and then which is now coming out, and it's another bill that's introduced. First of all, there's no regulation; nothing has been voted on. These are just proposals that are out there, and the DC they mentioned a lot the DCCPA, which Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act of 2022. And this one was put out by a couple of different senators, Stable Now from Michigan, and who is this other guy? Forestry and John Boozman, and a couple other ones. But I just say that because the original, I don't say the original, one that came out before them, which was by Senator Gillibrand and Senator Loomis, that one is referred to as the RFIA, or the Responsible Financial Innovation Act. I'm only throwing that out there because this stuff gets thrown out there a lot. So I just wanted to, clarify a little bit. And again, as Scott pointed out, these are just proposals that are put out there. And so it was interesting that Sam decided upon himself to just put out a blog, basically, of some of his ideas and thoughts about some of the stuff that was either in these two proposals or some ideas that he had about regulation as a whole. As Scott alluded to, Sam being really one of the I don't know what's the word I was going to say, sort of the kings of crypto, but he just is very powerful, because FTX is big, and he's got a lot of money. He's been one of them that have been trying to save some of these other crypto businesses that have been going under and had some problems. So clearly the guy is connected. He's got the money behind it, and I feel that regulators and legislators are asking him what he thinks. And, so I think it's responsible for him to do this in a way because he's being asked this. He's a leader in this space. And the guy's 30. I mean, as you watch that, you just watch him talk, and it's just funny because as interesting as I thought it was, he can be painful to listen to because it's kind of all over the place. Clearly a brilliant guy, and he just kind of was all over the place, which sometimes is a little frustrating. And Eric was such a contrast to that. He was very, sort of slow, very calm, very demure. And what's interesting, as Scott alluded to, Eric clearly is a crypto Satoshi Nakamoto Bitcoin maximalist in his view. It's just the view, I call it the utopia view of the original Satoshi white paper. Lots of good ideas in there. I think where Sam falls in is, he's more practical. He's a businessman. He's dealing with this stuff right in the trenches of the regulations and the crypto side. I think he believes in all the crypto, if you will, basics of blockchain and permissionless and non-authority. But he's in the real world, and so I really appreciate his perspective. So that being said, what I thought we'd do is we just dive into. He broke them down into sections, and so if it's okay, the first section is talking about hacking. And I'll just say that this is my number one issue with crypto. I talk about it all the time. As an investor and as an educator, I have a crypto academy that I teach students about crypto. And one of the things that keeps me up at night is teaching newbies into crypto, all about crypto, saying how wonderful it is and giving them tools to get in there. And then they get hacked, or, people's funds get hacked. And so it's a real issue with me. And, I am glad that there's some proposals on the table. So what I thought I'd do is I would just go through a couple, this is mostly my interpretation. Some of it I took right out of it, but basically what he's proposing is that major trusted parties adding addresses associated with the security breaches. So if a protocol is breached or hacked, he's saying that the addresses, they can, on the blockchain, pull out the addresses. Hopefully this could get a little bit technical, but if you have suspicious addresses that then are dealing with that protocol, and on the basic case, they can find out who hacked, basically. And it's a beautiful thing about the blockchain, right? It's like it's all open, it's all transparent, and for the most part, they know who hacked what. Now, of course, it's synonymous, which means they don't easily know the identity of that person. But more and more, I think they're finding better ways to actually trace that back and find the identities. But still, a lot of these hackers, they don't know their identity, but they can see what happened. And so these addresses can be flagged. And again, as you guys know, once it's on the blockchain, it's there forever. It never goes away. So these addresses will, no matter where they are, they can be filtered and flagged by different protocols and different validators within the blockchain, right? And so what he's saying is that these third-party addresses, that the central exchanges and the decentralized exchanges should be able to freeze out those addresses. Now, he uses the word freeze out. I don't exactly know what that means, and I've always wondered that. And I'm curious what you guys think of that. Does that mean that they can cancel them? They can delete them? What does that even mean? So I'll just stop at that and see what you guys think of that. So what he's proposing is that they have the control to filter these out. And as we know, with the recent Tornado Cash incident, that this is a big issue. It's a big topic about freedom and, freedom of, of your identity not being compromised. So what do you guys think about that? Scott, let's go with you first. What do you think?
Well, I think as far as freeze goes, those addresses are blacklisted, which means that they cannot be used again. They're frozen. If that comes up anywhere on the blockchain, it's immediately halted. That's my understanding.
That basically they wouldn't pass the transaction on. That literally, if that transaction comes across a validator node, and again, this is mostly done with software, that address would just be frozen and it wouldn't be passed on down the blockchain is how I think it goes. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's what happened with Tornado Cash is those recipients that those addresses that had Tornado Cash on them were then blocked. And the people went, and it went so far as people were sending Tornado Cash to like celebrities and such to get their account blocked. I mean, it just, so yeah, I mean, that's my understanding as far as, this portion and stopping the hackers, which we'll get into a little bit later with KYC, et cetera, further down in the article. So I'll leave
Brianna?
that and go ahead, Brianna.
Yeah. Okay. So one aspect of this that I found really interesting was for people who hack, for them to everything. But basically, it went in to say if I were to hack, let's say I hacked $100,000 from someone's
Okay,
address.
Brianna. Hey, Brianna, let me cut you off for just a second. Sorry to do that. But because this what we're going through is so complicated in some ways, I want to like really section this off. And so before we go into that, because you're talking about that 5-5 deal that Sam proposed, and I think is fascinating. But before we go even into that, what do you think about freezing addresses of of hackers, basically? And should all of the validator nodes and the exchanges have the ability to freeze? So it's sort of all of the tornado cash issue. What is your view on that?
Just from hearing it and from reading it, I would say that you would think that you would want that to be able to be done. I know that it's more complicated than that. Whether that could impose some kind of risk to our freedoms to be able to, it's hard without everything kind of laid out on the table. And I think that it did go in at some point, and I don't want to get ahead either. I don't know if I clicked on something from this blueprint or where it came from that said that if you were to be issued, so if someone were to send you funds, so kind of like where you were saying, Dr. Scott, where people were sending stuff to celebrities to be able to get their account to freeze, if you were the receiver, then it wouldn't freeze yours. It was only from the sender. So that might protect you from being a receiver of somebody who's sending funds that had fraudulent activity behind it. And then it also mentioned somewhere within this, or one of the links off of this, that there would be a database that would in real time collect these addresses from fraudulent users, scammers, hackers, and be able to get them to like every single exchange and then be able to freeze them pretty much right there. So I guess if the question is, do I think that they should be able to do this? Then I would say yes. But that's just with only the idea that they can just freeze the fraudulent wallet address.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think that's a really good point because that, and I personally don't know how, it's not that clear to me exactly how this works. If somebody's a hacker and their address gets flagged, or in the case of Tornado Cash, unfortunately, what I think was happening was anybody that transacted, and again on the blockchain, it's going to tell you what your address is, where address you're forwarding to, and what address you came from. So it knows, like, oh, you've got connected with your address that you've connected with the Tornado Cash smart app or whatever, forever. And so it's tainted in a way. It doesn't mean that you're a hacker. It just means that you used potentially that service, or somebody that had used the service sent something to you. And that's really unfair. So I think they need to really get that clear. And this didn't really address that too much. But what Sam was saying was that they need to be able to do this, that there has to be some sort of regulation that central exchanges, decentralized exchanges, validators can do this. Because right now it's up in the air. What is the protocol that gets hacked? What do they want to do? How they want to handle it? It's all up in the air. There's no consistency to it. So that was one of the things that he was suggesting. And I agree that because it's just not fair, especially if you got sent some funds or something, whether you accepted it or not, because a lot of times you don't know what these are if they're sent to you. Okay. So okay. And I agree with you too. I guess my statement is we need to know a lot more about this. It's definitely something that should be addressed from the central exchanges for sure, even decentralized exchanges and even validators. Because let me just throw this in. One of the things that I learned a lot about how validators work, again, this is the consensus mechanism in the blockchain, especially on Ethereum and other layer one blockchains like it, is the validators hold a lot of control. And a lot of this came under this study I did called MEV. I was going to say minor extracted variable. It's not minor. It's, what is it, Scott? Maximum value, extracted value. And so that's a point that the validators...
It used to be minor.
Right. In the Yeah, right. When there was miners in the Bitcoin and Ethereum, so they have a lot of power, and so this is done mostly with software, right? So they're on the front end. The software basically, filters out transactions, at high speed or whatever. And one of the ways is this company called Flashbots has software that is trying to help make this MEV situation equal because they have a lot of power, and in some cases, my validators that are using techniques can really lengthen our transactions, cause us, to lose transactions. There's a whole bunch of detail to it, but this software that Flashbots has automates this and makes it basically a more fair, equal playing field. That being said, the Flashbot software is loaded in with all of the OFAC's addresses that are flagged as something criminal or whatever, right? So most of the validators now on the Ethereum network, they're automatically flagging these right now. And the question is, I still don't really know what they're doing. They say flagged, freezing. I don't really know. But what I'm trying to make a point here is that this is a big deal. And it's not like anybody has any authority or consistency in this. The only consistency is the Flashbot software that's in most all validators is flagging these Tornado Cash and other suspects. And it's a U.S. law by the OFAC who determines who's on this list, who these bad actors are. So this is a real big issue. This doesn't really address that other than what we'll get to in a minute, Brianna, and you can discuss this, was Sam's sort of 5-5 deal where he's saying that, the hackers should be able to allowed to take some of the bounty if they're willing to play by these rules. So go ahead and explain that first. What is this 5-5 thing? And if I have it written out here, but if you do too, you can kind of explain.
If you have it prepared, Scott, go for it, because mine's okay. Kind of just all over. So go for it.
Let's see. So what he's proposing. So first of all, he's proposing that hackers who are identified and give back the bounty, basically, they're allowed to keep 5% and of whatever they hacked, I think. And what this does is it becomes the white hackers, right? So it's an interesting proposal that some protocols have already done. Again, there's just no regulation, there's no consistency, where they basically say, look, if you give us back most of the funds, because the bottom line is, and Sam makes a big deal, is we want to make the users, the end users, clients, whole. Make sure that they aren't ripped off. So if you do this, we'll give you this fee, which is usually millions of dollars, right? If you'll return it and, oh, thank you, now we know we have a vulnerable bug area that we can fix so that won't happen again. It's your basic white hacker situation. So what he's saying is that, so the 5-5, what was it? Now I don't have it clearly here. I know it was 5%. What was the other 5?
Okay, so
5. So they have to return 95% of the assets. I guess they get to keep 5% of whatever that is, of whatever they hacked. 5% of the amount took. Yeah, I don't even know what the other 5% is. But I think the most important part is the hacker gets to keep millions of dollars and almost gets rewarded for this. So you want to take it from there, Brianna?
Yeah, and I think what I'm just seeing right here is I only see 2 5s, the 5-5.
Right.
And when I was reading this, I couldn't even believe I was reading this. But the more I started to think about it, I really think could be a brilliant idea, because this gives people people who are trying to hack something and get money that way, if that's what they're going to be doing anyways, if you're never going to be seeing that money again, if someone just hacks it and it's gone, why not incentivize this to be, they're almost at that point become an employee. I mean, they're not technically an employee, but they're somebody who is creating a stronger system that will ultimately help the customers, and they're getting rewarded a little bit for it, but the customers are protected. I guess that who's taking the brunt of that force is the protocol, right? So
Yeah.
for having that bug, which seems right, because they should be, the purpose is that they're allowing you to use their service and you should feel fully secure. But if your security is breached, then they are the one who are penalized, not the customer. And then it also might help prevent people from trying to hack and just get away with it and not have a purpose, I guess, behind their hacking, that's going to be helpful. Not only that, it says that people who don't return the 95% are treated as bad actors, and that will likely mean that they're blacklisted or their wallets are, blacklisted from there. So those are my thoughts on that subject.
Well, and just to add that, yeah, and that's how I understood it, and add just a couple more facts to that. They have 24 hours to, either comply completely. There's no negotiation. And I thought this was smart to add this, because I think they're like, well, in the last case resort, okay, I'll do this. But he's like, no, you have to accept this proposal right up front, within 24 hours. And if you don't, boom, you're a bad actor, and we're gonna pursue. I like that part. Another fact here that I'll add is that he says that if, and I'm not sure I calculated this, but he says if this 5.5 standard had been followed historically, it would have reduced the impact of hacks by more than 98%. That's pretty significant, if that's the case. So it's hard to really argue against that. And I'll just throw my 2 cents, and then we'll turn it over to you, Dr. Scott. I'm really torn by this because I really see the benefit of that, especially when you look at that 98%, that the impact all across, from end users to the protocols to whatever, would have been reduced to 98%. On the other hand, it's just like, here, go ahead, hack me, hack everybody. Let's just have hackathons, So I'm really torn, because I don't know. So just in my gut, I don't like this. It's like, it just seems like a green light to hack, but it may be the best we can do at this point, because I've been really frustrated with the lack of security and the lack of, I'm not a programmer, but I don't understand why these programmers can't get this stuff more secure. I mean, come on. I mean, we're not dealing with emails here, which are important. We're talking about millions of dollars, and people just put these protocols out there because it's open source, and I'm being a little bit edgy about this, but it just seems like anybody can put some code out there, call it a protocol, have a fancy marketing, company market their stuff, get millions of dollars, and even if they're well-intentioned, put out buggy code that gets hacked. I find that extremely distasteful. So that's yeah. So go ahead, Scott. What do you think?
Well, what he's trying to do is put a stipulation, a regulation, we'll say, a rule, and there are companies, exchanges, etc., that actually have a delineated percentage that they will pay for hackers, white hackers, to try to get into their systems so that they can correct them before bad actors come in and do that. And that's the person's job. That's what they're doing. They're freelancers, entrepreneurs, and they try to hack into their, and the company says, okay, if you do that, we will give you X percentage, and then we can block that and stop the millions of dollars from being hacked.
Well, I have a question about that. I have a question about that, though. And we know that, I mean, white hackers, that's the term. We know about that before even Bitcoin happened. I mean, in the computer world, right? Internet, that's a thing, right? Do you know that how I understood that was, it's not really advertised by the companies, other than, they hire these people and they do it. They don't necessarily disclose how much they're going to get or whatever. It's kind of a deal between a hacker and, a company. And I could be wrong there, but that's kind of what I'm saying, is that in that world, it's kind of like known hackers are out there, but it's individual deals. and it's not necessarily publicized that, hey, if you hack us, we'll give anybody this amount of money. It's kind of a one-off deal. This seems like it's just like standard. We're going to give everybody 5% of where you can hack. I just have a problem with that. What do you say to that?
Well, because he's been in the business long enough, and what it is it's self-regulation. It's an unwritten rule in crypto, and he's trying to put some stipulation out there so that it becomes standardized. That yes, we understand this is a difficult, pro, programming is tough and difficult, and mistakes are made. They're gonna be made, and so therefore, if even if you came upon an action that you weren't even being malicious about, and you ended up, the ATM gives you $6,000 when you wanted 60, that happens. And what he's saying is, if you give that back, there's you get a bonus, but there's no, uh, you know, deleterious action for that. And there's always going to be that need, because they're with the difficulty in writing code and being able to transact with all of these millions of people and millions of dollars, and all of these bridges, as you so wonderfully are so proud of, Scott. But that's, they're one company doesn't know how the other company's code is written. I mean, you can't. And so when these interactions occur, that's where the fault lies. And so they have, you know good actors out there that are going through that system and trying to find faults. And they're freelancers. They're not necessarily being paid by the company. They get paid when they find a fault, and it's a side job.
So I
That's
guess bottom line is, are you in favor of this? Would you be in favor of this proposal?
Yes, because there is always going to be faults and errors in code. It's just too difficult to. And so what it's doing is it's providing people that happenstance have occurrences, and not get blacklisted as being a malicious actor or a bad
Okay.
actor when they weren't trying to be. Number one, and number two, it's giving the resources to people who can find faults in their system before somebody runs away with millions of dollars.
Okay, that's a good argument. So let's do a fun thing here. I'm just going to ask, as we come across these controversial sometimes subjects or whatever, whether we're for them or not, let's just get it out there on the blockchain. Are we for it, against it? You're for it. Brianna, for or against this proposal?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Dr. Scott. I'm for it. And I think when I'm thinking about this, I ask myself a couple of questions. Is it better, like, can we assume that if we have people who are constantly trying to hack code, and I don't know anything about coding, I'm the last person to ask, but can we assume that we will reach a level where it is so strengthened that this would plateau? To be able to even be hacked. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how that
Good point.
works, but that's a question that I ask myself. And then I guess the other question is it, I guess, if that's the case, is it better to constantly combat something, which means blacklisting hackers that are going to continue to hack? They're just going to continue to hack no matter what. I mean, that's not going to, because they're blacklisted, that's not going to stop these people. They're going to
No.
keep doing it. And is that creating more security, or is it just kind of continuing on a war that's never going to be conquered? So yeah, I would say I'm for it. And I don't know, as an outsider to it, I would assume that would maybe reach certain levels of where that would plateau. And also maybe it would give these hackers with their greedy ways some sort of purpose in life that's kind
Wow.
of beyond that, where they feel like they're actually, hey, I'm actually kind of helping something, and maybe it will just change their heart a little bit. That's the way I'm
Okay.
looking at it
Well,
too.
and make a few million here and there. Not a bad deal. So, you guys, okay, so that basically means that you've convinced me. I was a no, and now I'm a yes. Good job on both of you. Because no, I think you both had really good arguments for that. So you changed my mind on that. So good job. Let's move on. I don't know if we're ever going to get through this. This is so fun. This is so good. Okay, asset listings. What is a security? Oh my God, this one is crazy. But this is probably one of the most wide known issues in regulation. I mean, everybody's afraid. Are they going to turn crypto into the stock market? Are they going to treat everything like a security and everything like that? It's also, I believe, also one of just not a lot is being said about this. We know Gary Gensler of the FTC just like pulling out the guns and just like walking around finding anybody he can, shooting them with some with penalties without having any regulation. So I'll say right there, I am not a fan of that at all. It's like, everybody says, just give us some regulation, just give us some guidance, and we'll follow it. But without anything, how can you just run around and start shooting people? That's how I view this. So, what does he say here? Gosh, I wrote this all down here. I think what he's saying is that he's saying that in general, Bitcoin and Ethereum are not considered securities. Many long tail tokens acting as investment contracts are securities. So this is his viewpoint, is how I'm reading this. He says, but there are a number which are unclear. Duh, that's an understatement. He says, eventually there may be legislative, regulatory, and judicial clarity in this question. Until then, this is how FTX at least plans to proceed. To be clear, this is only for listings on FTX US. This is not meant to make any decision for the industry more broadly. And he says, first, our legal team will do an analysis of the asset according to the Howey test and other relevant case law and guidance. If the analysis finds this to be a security, FTX will treat it as such. It says it doesn't. If it does find that it is security, we will generally treat it. Excuse me. If it is not a security, we will treat it as a non-security commodity unless the asset is found by the SEC or other appropriate court to be a security. If we do not find the asset to be a security, we will not. Okay, I keep messing up. If we do find a security, then we will not list it. So I guess he's just saying they're going to do their analysis. They're going to do what the government should be doing and determine on their own if they think it's a security. If they think it is, they will not list it on their exchange. He says, ideally, we'd end up in a place as an industry where being a security is not a bad thing, where there are clear processes for registering a digital asset security which protects customers while allowing for innovation. We remain excited to work constructively with regulators, blah, blah, blah. So what do you guys think about his proposal? I'll just say that it's kind of what he's saying is and he has the right as the CEO of an exchange what they're going to do. Be it that there's no regulation right now. He's just saying we're going to do the best we can to figure it out. I imagine they've got some lawyers that probably are talking to the SEC or former SEC. I mean, I imagine they've got some people that are very well in the know about what this should be. And they're going to just take it upon themselves to kind of regulate in their own way for their exchange. First of all, let's start with you, Scott. What's your interpretation of that, and what do you think about it?
Well, I think it's what he didn't say that's more interesting. All he did was say what he's doing currently with FTX. He didn't say a whole lot of anything.
No, you're right.
And that is exactly what the government is doing. The feds are doing. They're saying a lot of nothing. And it's unfortunate but true. They're continuing to kick the can down the road, and there are luckily some of the senators that are trying to move this forward and put regulation in. And the bottom line is what the U.S. is doing is they're following the EU. So they're looking at the EU, and then they're, let me get that in there. That
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, because they don't understand it well enough, in my opinion. And the ones that are getting pushback from so many other sources, like the one bill that is on uh, the bipartisan bill, the Waters McHenry bill, which is on stable coins, has been out there. I think, I don't know. I want to say since 2020. That's off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. But the Waters, who is the Waters and McHenry, who are the originators of the bill, are saying it looks like an ugly baby. That was quote unquote, because it's just getting torn from all sides, because nobody is stepping forward and saying this is what it is, and then it goes into this committee and that committee, and it's unfortunate but true. So it was, again, I'll just end with, it was a lot of nothing.
I agree. Brianna?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that this one is, it just doesn't come naturally to me. And I don't really, the securities and commodities thing is a little bit beyond me. And I haven't wanted to dive in too much into it. Finance is relatively new to me. I just have to be straightforward and honest there. I know more about decentralized finance than traditional finance. And it seems like we're just trying to categorize these things into something that, and then like Dr. Scott said, like pick everything apart. And it's almost like, let's take this thing that's whole and pick it into pieces and then see how we can best control each and every avenue on it into something that we don't fully understand. I mean, that's just my outsider's point of view. And I just don't know enough about that aspect of it to be able to have like a true judgment on that topic. I kind of just brushed through it and ignored it.
Well, it was a lot of nothing anyways.
To say.
Yeah.
The reason that in my opinion, the reason that the can is getting kicked down the road is because this is a decentralized asset, and they're trying to centralize the asset, and then apple and an orange, literally, the Howey test doesn't fit. And it's not going to fit unless we make compromises, which is further down the road in this discussion, I hope. But
Right.
you can't make something that is decentralized, centralized, and have it fit a law that's about orange concentrate from the 1930s. Damn it.
I agree. Yes. And so this one gets a big. Okay, that was actually happier than I thought. I was looking for more like a foghorn that basically said, on all of this, I think all three of us, this was a lot of nothing. And, like you said, Dr. Scott, I kind of get why. This is a crazy complicated thing. They're trying to do something that really can't be done anyway. So this will get kicked around for a long time, this particular
they'll
issue.
do it.
You think they'll just pull it and throw a law out there? It says what's a security and isn't?
This is the big point of contention of Eric and Sam is,
Yeah.
KYC, and centralizing a decentralized product.
Yeah.
And whoa, get me started on that one.
Okay, well, we'll get to that one in a minute because that was what was very it was very interesting in the debate between the two of them. And I don't know, we may just rock and roll this for another hour and we can split it up, or I don't know, because I think this is going to take a long time to get through, but I think it's good. So let's just power through. It may be a 2-hour podcast. We'll just go with it because that part is interesting. But I do want to get through the basic blueprint. So let's move on to tokenized equities. So without going into I don't know like all the details of this, what I thought was really interesting was so what they I keep screwing up my notes here. What they were basically saying, what I thought was interesting the way he pointed this out was that in a single investment, like a stock transaction, there are over 15 entities that have to be involved in the settlement of that transaction. And it's just, that's crazy. I didn't know it. I knew that there was a lot, but that's interesting. And he listed them out actually, which I thought was interesting. But every time you have one of these settlements, you've got to go through all this stuff because and millions of dollars have to be connected in this chain of all these entities because every entity has to like have enough backup in case somebody defaults that they can cover it. So every one of those 15 entities or so on has to have millions of dollars in their bank account to protect against somebody defaulting. I mean, it's just crazy amount. I don't remember what this was, but when I learned about this, and somebody had said, if you can move all this to the blockchain and get rid of all those 15 entities, we're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars that would evaporate basically because all those entities wouldn't have to have all this backup currency, collateral, or whatever you want to call it. It's crazy to think. So bottom line to this is that, should we tokenize equities at some point? Now, if we thought that the last subject was controversial or whatever, I can't even imagine, a government, the U.S. government, ever really buying off on tokenizing stocks, because that's kind of what we're saying here, is that every stock should just be a token and use the blockchain so you can have the efficiency and the trustlessness of a blockchain. That's what I got out of this part. What do you guys think about this section? Brianna, why don't you go first?
You can take this one, Scott, Dr. Scott. I don't have much to add to this one either.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one that when I was reading it, Sam seemed to imply that he was going that route, that he feels like stocks should be going down the blockchain route. And, I mean, going back to what you were saying as far as efficiency and the 15 steps of a credit card transaction or even a stock equities interchange, it is absurd and it's ridiculous. And if you can and blockchain certainly does take all of that out of there. It's just that what they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, in my opinion, because in order for that to happen, you're taking a centralized environment and putting it into a decentralized environment, and then you have to add more steps in order for that to occur. And the steps are gonna, and bottom line is follow the money. A step means that they're taking a percentage of that transaction. That's what the government is doing right now.
That's right.
They're getting their paws into this, and they're saying compromise here and compromise here, which means I'm going to take this portion, and this portion of the government is going to get this portion, and this portion, and this portion, and you're centralizing a decentralized environment. You cannot do that, and that's what Eric was saying. You cannot do that, and once you do that, once we allow that to happen, we're all screwed.
Yeah, there's so many things about that conversation that we're going to get to later that I'm like can't wait to get to because it's so interesting about that. But I'll just say on this one, it's going to be a long time before any of this stuff could actually happen. I'll tell you, I heard on another podcast that SBF's proposal for this, he has this already in his pocket. He's basically, I'm guessing here a little bit, but it's like he's got this ready to roll. Like he would like nothing more to become the entity that would do this, that could take everything and tokenize it. And he even said that it's already we already have it. It'd be so simple. You just wrap wrap a stock in, around in a token. Technically, very, very easy to do. But it'll never happen. I mean, the government will never, and all the entities in there, even though it's ridiculous, they all take their little piece. So this is kind of like a talking. I totally agree. Talking out both sides. No, this was a bad one. Nope. Wait. I guess that's the negative one. That means that. So that was like, all right. Let's get to the next one then. This one: customer protections, disclosures, and suitability. It says the clearest way to help protect investors is to provide transparency and to prevent scams. I'm going to read a few parts of this. Retail investors should generally not be able to lose money, should not be able to lose more money than they have deposited into a platform, or any other credit extended by a platform should be given extreme scrutiny. He's really talking about part of DeFi where we're using futures and leverage and uncollateralized loans. And it's a scary part. People have lost millions and millions of dollars. And so I think this is his attempt to shore that up a little bit. Because I think even this is, regulators are concerned about this. I mean, their job is to protect, right? I mean, that's what they say. So not that they are brilliant about how they go about this, but that is their job to protect. And I think this is one of the things they're concerned about is because DeFi can be confusing and not everybody knows the rules, and people are losing a lot of money. So what he says here is that he says that it's also worth noting that this is one of the strengths of DeFi. Even during one of the largest crashes in crypto history, truly decentralized platforms didn't suffer losses because rather than rely on vague credit checks, they verified the assets used for margin by requiring them as collateral. So generally, most DeFi applications, if you're going to borrow, you have to have over-collateralization. As simple as if you want to borrow $500, you have to have $1,000 of collateral in the system to get your 500, which just protects everybody for the most part. But there are more areas moving in and moving into under-collateralized loans, like normal lending, where you have just a very portion of the collateral down, and then most of it is a loan, is borrowing. That's happening. And as more bigger institutions come into the space, they're used to that. They don't over-collateralize because they're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. They aren't going to put $1 billion in there to borrow $1 million. So this is something that is got to be looked at. What else does he says? He says, so rather than making assumptions about economically disadvantaged populations or condescending to any particular group, it drives straight at what is, in fact, the largest worry, that people will use a product they do not understand, taking a risk that they are not willing to take. And it says, in general, America is built on a foundation of freedom and individual choice, and that's truly economically and financially as well as verbally. But that doesn't allow platforms to take advantage of customers with misleading, deceptive, or sloppy products. Now, I didn't really understand this one until I listened to the podcast. And tell me if I'm wrong here, what you guys think. Because in the podcast, they talked a lot about, they had a definite discussion about not having people be confused or lose money and having some sort of regulation. And I think this is what got into this whole, issue of what is DeFi, what are the, basic ideas of DeFi versus trying to centralize even parts of this or regulate parts of this. And this is what Eric kept bringing up and saying, anything that you do to DeFi, anytime. So let me back up. So Sam is basically saying that DeFi should be, everything on the DeFi side should remain permissionless, validators, true decentralized blockchain technology should not be regulated at all. But on the front end of that, the GUI, what people interact with, that should be regulated somehow. Because what he's afraid of is that marketers, smart people in marketing, will get people to invest in this GUI or use this GUI to then invest in things that they don't understand and will lose money. And so he's saying that we need to protect people at this upfront side. Now, Eric was basically saying, no, that kills DeFi. That kills everything. If you regulate that part of it, you regulate everything, and it defeats the whole purpose. And what Sam was, I think, saying, and again, I jumped ahead here, but I think this part seemed vague to me without that part of the discussion, was let's be practical. And we can talk about this more later when we get to that interview in detail, but I think that was the big difference, was that Sam was saying, look, there's going to be some regulation here. And let's pick and choose where we regulate. And he thinks that this is a good idea to put regulations on the front end of DeFi, at least for America, right? For U.S. law. And of course, Eric's stance is no, he doesn't cross that line at all. So I'll just say that I agree with Sam. This is one I agree with him on. I think regulation is inevitable. And let's pick and choose. Let's get involved. Let's get up front with it. And this is an area that he's saying that the potential loss is minimal compared to the savings and the gain and the protections of people. And of course, Eric disagrees, with this. So, Brianna, does this one, you want to chime in on this one, or?
Yeah. Okay. So back to it's all just so very complicated, but I think it's been made to be more complicated than it needs to be. But I think I did highlight that, and I agreed with the part of the credit. Okay, I think that there's in history, even we can see what credit has done, and I don't think it's the best way to move forward. And a lot of people, even in crypto, have been really hurt by the fact that they're being able to be lent crypto that is based on, it just can get you into really bad situations. People can lose a lot of money, and people can make money as well. There's both sides of that. However, I do think that when it comes to DeFi, part of that paradigm shift, or at least what I consider to be that paradigm shift, is that you are as the participant, you are taking accountability and that responsibility, and it's our job, and people want that convenient way. We're trained and conditioned right now to have that convenient way to be able to, you can fall back on your bank if something's happened, or you can, and you just want things to be easy. You don't want to have to get too into understanding things. Everything kind of needs to be laid out for you. And I think there is a place, and I think that DeFi is one of those places where people can, you're not forced to do it. You don't have to be forced to be a part of it. But to do it, and it's kind of just the way to be able to learn from your own mistakes, and the way to be able to take that responsibility by learning. And so maybe adding in that education. I know that he proposes that a little bit here. Sam proposed that a little bit to for people to have to go through like educational quizzes to be able to invest. But I think even taking a deeper look for people who want to be successful, that comes with a lot of responsibility. And you can't really have a lot of your hand held through that. But I think on a broader sense, when we're considering the fact that we are inevitably moving into a cashless society, we just naturally, or that's what's happening. I know they say that CBDCs are coming in, that's going to be an option. You'll still be able to use cash. How much cash is really being circulated? We all can see that that's not happening. It's coming to a close. Do we want to have KYC on every single transaction? Is there a place for DeFi where we don't, that would almost take the place of exchanging with cash, with fiat, where that shouldn't have to be traced and have permission when it's already built into the system? I don't know if I'm getting at your question. I'm kind of just getting my thoughts out here. That
was talked about a lot in the interview, and we can bring that back up there in that point. I think you got your point. Before we go on, before we talk to Scott, I got to put this up here. So our friend Petya says, hello, friends. So hi, Petya.
Hi,
Glad you're
Patia.
watching. So I just want to throw that. Oh, and one of my friends, Alan Little, says he loved the crypto talks. Thanks, Alan. We love them too. This one's going to be a long one, so hang in there. Get some coffee if you want to, hang in there with us. Scott, what do you think about this part? This one's a little confusing. It was kind of all over the place. What do you make of this section?
Well, the very first part, the first sentence or first couple sentences, when he said that, reiterating, I did not follow. He said something along the lines that a retailer or an individual should not should remain whole. I'm like, what?
Yeah, he said generally not be able to lose more money than they have deposited, is what he said.
Yeah. I'm like, what the hell is that? How?
Yeah, it's like on the stock market. That happens all the time.
It happens in life every day.
You're right. So it is funny that he made this point.
It's called inflation, I mean,
well,
you can just sit
don't
there
even
and do
get
nothing and you
going.
lose money. So that to me was, but anyway, I won't belabor that point. But and then the next section, when he was talking about having a dollar for dollar backing kind of thing, he was talking about, in my opinion, he was talking about UST and stable coins and the algorithmic function. He's saying, no, don't do that. Look what happened to UST. That's my take on what he was saying there.
Well, he did. Now there is a separate section on stable coins where he talks about that. So I don't know if he talked about it there or if you're confusing it with stablecoin part, but yeah, this part was weird. This part didn't make a lot of sense to me either. Do you have anything else on this, or should we move on?
No, I wanted to address is this? I don't have the paper in front of me. I have it memorized.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. But as far as you had just talked about, Brianna and Scott, I think the front end loading, and this is the portion we're talking about. That correct? I want to stay within our guidelines here.
Right, stay within the guidelines. So you mean the part about where Eric is more on the DeFi side and Sam's like, let's hold off. I know you're chomping at the bit to get to that. Okay. Let's hold off on that part. We'll kind of go through these. Maybe we'll go through these a little quicker so we can kind of get to that. The next part of this was sanctions, allow lists, and block lists, which is funny because this should have been up in the part about hacking. It should have been connected to that. And I think what's interesting about this is kind of a simple thing. Should there be blacklist or allow list? Again, I don't even know necessarily the difference, other than a block list just means that it's like the bad actors, and if are in this list, and if it's flagged, you're out of there. Versus allow list, where the list comprises of everyone that's allowed, and then if you're not on that list, you're not allowed. I mean, who cares? I don't even know if that matters. There's a list, and we want to flag out the bad guys or not. What was interesting, again, a lot. We'll get to this in the interview, but this was a big contention because this is where, again, he brings up the OFAC and that they have the control over these lists. And Eric brought up a huge thing, and we'll talk about that because I was really interested about his example of the girl in Iran or whatever. So basically what he was saying, and Eric had a big issue saying, you're kind of saying you're giving the OFAC the OFAC a pass. You're saying that there should be, the good guys. And Eric was, they're not good guys. He basically was very, adamant about that. And so, for those who don't know, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, they are the main ones that maintain for the U.S. Department of Treasury. They enforce all economic and trade sanctions. So again, terrorists, all that kind of stuff. And now they're involved in this area. They create the list that gets sanctioned. And this list then gets put on the validator nodes, and voila, we have this centralization vector. The guys on Bankless, they like to call these centralized vectors within cryptocurrency, which I think is interesting, because even though we all believe in this decentralized, even Ethereum, there are centralized vectors like MEV that are embedded even within crypto. So another topic, but that's what we're kind of getting here, is that this whole blacklist thing or whatever. I'm just going to move on with this one unless you guys have anything really you want to say about this.
No, go ahead.
We're going to move on to DeFi, which again, we'll probably move through this really quick because I think the juicy stuff is to kind of decode the interview. But I'll just first say that, well, he's basically saying, this is where he's saying that you don't need a financial license to upload code to the blockchain. So smart contracts should remain permissionless and free. Similarly, validators have a core duty to correctly validate blocks and not judge them or police them. Validators should remain permissionless and free. However, the following activities would potentially require some license registration. This is where he was getting into that argument where front-ending DeFi with the GUI. He says, an American hosting a website on AWS that actively provides a front end that encourages and facilitates US retail users to trade on decentralized protocols, actively marketing DeFi products to the US retail investor. So my take on this, again, is that that's what he wants. He thinks that if there's going to be some regulation to protect consumers, this is a place to do it at the front end, so that somebody can't just put a market something to retail consumers that they don't understand, and then now that the front end GUI protects them, they don't really know what's going on, and on the backside is all the decentralized stuff where bad things can happen, but they don't know anything about it because the front end protected them from that. Now, I've embellished that a little bit with my view because it kind of goes with my view about people using apps on their phone when they get into crypto. I'm just going to diverge a little bit because I have to. Companies like Robinhood and businesses that primarily are marketing to crypto newbies and people that don't really understand crypto because they make it like an app and like a game and they make it really simple to invest. That's nice. We want people to invest, but they mask most everything on the backside. So as an educator, teaching newbies, I don't touch the phones. I just say, look, we're not even going to talk about what you can do on an app on a phone. If you want to investigate that on your own, you can. But I want to teach you everything that goes on behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, so that everything you do, you're going to know exactly what's happening to the best that you can or that we can in this transaction. So we're going to use a computer. We're going to go into a centralized exchange. We're going to KYC. We're going to follow all those rules so that you completely understand where you are. So that now when you're in crypto and you're all hyped up because Bitcoin's up at 60,000 and then it drops to 20,000, you're not complaining because you don't know what the hell happened. So I diverge a little bit, but that's how I see this thing, is that, he wants some regulation around that so that can't happen necessarily. And again, this is one area that I agree with him. And I'll bring up the flashbots thing again, because he keeps saying that validators should remain permissionless and free. This is true, but flashbots is taking MEV, it gives the validators and that software the ability to flag transactions. So they're going to have to address that if they have regulation for this. That is a centralized part of blockchain and crypto, how the validators handle this. MEV is a deep dive if anyone ever wants to get into that. But it's fascinating because it is a centralized vector within decentralized crypto. Some people make a bigger deal out of it than others. But when you start throwing in a company like Flashbots that now loads software into 95% of the validators that automatically has the OFAC list in it, I don't know. That sounds centralized to me. But, that doesn't really address, I guess, his point. But he's basically saying that validators should do whatever they want to do. They should be decentralized, and yet that's a vector. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Dr. Scott.
Well, yeah, you're getting pretty deep on this one. The front end loading is where Eric was drawing the line was in DeFi, and KYC is fine for CeFi, but he's drawing the line at DeFi, and it seems to me that Sam was saying no. We have to compromise somewhere in order for this to work, and we're going to compromise. I'm willing to compromise on the front end, and Eric was saying no.
Right.
I'm not going to compromise and give up what DeFi is with the anonymity portion. And I agree with Eric on that. DeFi needs to remain DeFi. Um, I could go on and on about that, but I mean, what is DeFi? I wrote this down because it's sometimes forgotten, and there's so much to. But there, on the other hand, is not. So DeFi is immutable. There's no third party intermediary. It's non custodial. It's decentralized. It's transparent. It's open access. It's democratic governance. It's interoperability. It's programmability. It's privacy. And I underline privacy. So that's what DeFi is. That's what DeFi needs to remain. And don't muck with it. I'll use an M.
Okay, good. I'm going to listen to Brianna, and then I got my opinion about this.
I agree. I agree with Eric on that fully, and I agree with Dr. Scott on that. And maybe it's a good time I can read. I did transcribe Eric's statement, his closing statement, that goes kind of over the essence and purpose of DeFi as well. So I'll just read that, and I can just my thoughts align with this. And what he says is, we have created essentially a new financial foundation for the whole world. This is a huge responsibility, and the entire purpose of this financial foundation is that all of humanity can use an open, immutable financial layer. We are separating money from politics, separating money from the state, in the same way that the church was separated from the state, and now everyone hails that as one of the greatest things that humanity ever did. We now, too, it comes to us to do the same for money. Money is as or more important to people than religion is. We interact with it every day in all sorts of manners. And just in mathematics and language are immutable and open to the entire human race, so too should the exchange and management of money. That is the principle that makes the entire ecosystem important. That is the principle that justifies everything that we do. And if we lose that, it will be something that we will regret for the rest of our lives because we have the opportunity. We can't protect that principle when it comes to centralized custodians, granted, but we can protect the principle when it comes to immutable and decentralized finance, or DeFi. And then he concludes that he requests to exclude DeFi from its conception when it comes to this bill. Not because it shouldn't be regulated, but because it's too important to screw that up, and it should not be included in a bill that includes how normal custodians should operate. And so that's in a nutshell what he said. There was a little bit more added to that, and I can absolutely agree that if we look at why the premise, I guess, behind decentralized finance and why it was created, it isn't something to like so sloppily kind of throw together like Sam did. And I'm not saying I don't appreciate Sam and him putting out his thoughts and opinions and views on this, but when it comes to DeFi, it's kind of like that most sacred place within the whole crypto ecosystem. and it's something to be very thoughtful about. And so I agree with Eric's words on that.
Okay. Well, this is okay. So now I got to go in. Well, first of all, I don't agree with both of those premises. I don't. And it's interesting because this is going to, like, our friend Petya is just not going to like my statements here. And I love you, Petya. But I just want to say that we've got to grow up. We can't sit here in the infancy of this utopian view of what this could be. That's just like, how do I really feel? Is that what you say, Scott, sometimes? Like, how do you really feel? That's how I feel. I just think we've got to grow up and deal with this. Money, unlike the church, which I get it, it's hard to believe that there could be any consensus on that, but there is, the division of church and state. But I just don't ever see that as much money is involved, as much power is involved in control and regulation, that we're ever going to get the utopia view. I love it. We all learned about crypto the same way. Hopefully, I study and I teach my students in depth about Satoshi Nakamoto, why Bitcoin was created, how it was created, what the blockchain does, all the utopian view. And I was, like, yes, this is awesome. And it is awesome. I totally agree. But now I'm like, and it's going to sound cocky and stupid, but I'm like, I feel like I've kind of grown up pretty fast. And I'm like, but now I am acting in the real world as an investor, as a business person, and I'm trying to deal with it the best I can. And I'm like, this is what I appreciate about Sam. Although I think, it's hard to listen to him sometimes. He's all over the place. I'm a little like him too. I'm kind of all over the place sometimes. But I'm like, he's in the trenches. He's in the real world. And so he's trying to bring and embrace crypto, but to the real world. And he understands that there's going to be regulation. And if we don't participate and kind of work with them a little bit, that they're going to ram something down our throats. Eric made an interesting point. He's like, why should we even entertain this right now? He's like, why do we have to even talk about this right now? And I think one of the Bankless podcasters mentioned that too. It's like, why don't we just wait until, the industry grows up, the regulators learn a bit more about, DeFi and about crypto, and we start to see some of the real world, makings and of what DeFi can bring. And, Sam didn't necessarily disagree with that. And he's basically saying, well, I never said we had to do this now. And I agree with what Sam, his point is that I think we should be talking about it and we should be actively involved in it. And we shouldn't just throw up our hands and just say, nope, we're not crossing this line. It's supposed to be, Satoshi Nakamoto's, utopia. Let's get involved. Let's look at the nuances, the gray in this, and let's dive in together. That's where I live. I appreciate you guys' perspective. I love that perspective. I just think that we need to dive in, and I appreciate that guys, like Sam are doing that, and that he's also not hard-headed. That he's pretty humble to a certain degree, and maybe you can be when you're worth billions of dollars, or whatever. But he's like, look, this is just my idea. This is my thoughts, and I'm willing to debate them, with anyone. Now, maybe underneath that, because he's such a power player, really, I think because he's got so much behind him that he can kind of say whatever he wants, and then just kind of like, oh, well, I didn't really mean that. I don't know. But sometimes I got that sense that he's just like, well, whatever. This is just my opinion. But his opinion weighs a lot. And I think with regulators, it packs a lot of weight. So that's interesting. So yeah, I think at this point we got there, because I wanted to talk about that, and let's go in deeper if you want to, because they both made some other interesting points. Eric made a lot of interesting points, and he kept saying, this is a line that he doesn't want to cross. That if you regulate that front end of DeFi, you ruin DeFi. I understand that that's a potential. I would just say it doesn't necessarily mean that would happen. Also, what Sam was trying to say was that I'm not saying that all of DeFi needs to be regulated. He's saying that the retail end of who gets access and how they get access into DeFi could be regulated, and he's willing to take that as, like a hit. Like, okay, if we have to regulate somewhere, I think this is the best place and the most um, least likely to really affect true DeFi and true decentralized, crypto, which he believes in. I certainly believe in it. You guys believe in it. I agree. And then he's saying that there's other DeFi, there's other transactions that are happening from protocol to protocol, and everything on the back end of DeFi that he's not saying needs to be regulated at all. He's just saying that on the consumer side for retail. So that's my understanding. So let me have it. Come on.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's have it.
Okay, so I think that the statement of, and appreciate hearing your perspective. I first want to say we all have our own perspectives, and that's why there's so many voices here. And this is why decentralization, I think, is crucial anyways, because how do you centralize all these voices and opinions and views? I mean, it's impossible without just full control. I just have to disagree with the thought of it being that's grown up to acquiesce a little bit. And I'm just saying that the thing that needs to go, I think, is taking the subordinate position and taking the back seat. And it's trying to make a deal, like, and I'm not trying to get like, it's almost like making a deal with the devil. You're like, how do we work with these regulators? It's not that we don't want, or maybe think that there's, at least the way that I see it, need regulation, but it's where is the regulation coming from? And that transparency that is going to be, and the way that it's going to be implemented on our end is going to only exist on our end. And that's something that we have to remember. It's not going to exist on their end. And I think that that's where people are just really fed up. I mean, if we just take a back seat to it and let them continue on and do their thing forever and just say, oh, it's we're never going to be able to conquer this. Just, I have to be real about it. And maybe it is being real about it, that they have too much power. But I guess for many people, I think that like that's where this is taking a stand against the man. It is taking that stand because if what you believe in is having that freedom, especially if we're, like I said before, if we're moving into a cashless society, before we could give somebody cash, and that didn't have to be completely known, why and what, like, to whom, and then we're getting back to the blacklisting, which I've kind of changed my view on that, or freezing accounts, because who's deciding what is going to be, like, whose accounts could be frozen? I mean, we saw what happened with the trucker convoys up in Canada, and that could happen all around. And so I don't know. I'm not ready to take a back seat, I guess, and that's kind of how I see it. But that's just my view on it.
You go, girl.
I believe in the whole the freedoms behind it. I think we should all have those freedoms, and I don't think that's a lot to ask. I don't think that there should be somebody overseeing every transaction, especially moving into a cashless society. But that's just my thought.
Good. That was well put. Good job. All right, Mr. Dr. Scott, what do you think? Let's have your final wrap it up summary. Like, what is your view on this? I mean, you kind of articulated it, but you want to add anything?
Oh, I'm not done.
Good.
Well, yeah, I want to say that the future's bright. This is such an exciting field and environment in the future, and the growth is potential is exponential, and I'm so looking forward to it. And in order for that to occur, we need to grow and expand and not limit ourselves. And I'm all for that. That's what excites me about this field, and it is the future. And I'm all good and well with that in CeFi, and allow CeFi to go there, because we're already doing that, and that's what's happening, and that's where the growth is. But leave DeFi. That's all. It's simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. How many times has Bitcoin been hacked? You know? Yepper. There's been a couple deflections, but I mean, bottom line is it is what it is, and there is the ability to have a utopian. Um, is it ever going to be perfect? Hell no. That's we have to accept that, but we can all work our best and try and our hardest to make it as good as we all possibly can. Um, and the last thing that I'll address is why now? Because if we don't get off our ass and jam, we're going to get passed up. And that is already happening. Um, just for example, the BRICS is happening, people. And more, Saudi Arabia is probably going to join next year. And what do we call the US dollar? The petrodollar. That's some scary stuff, folks. The central banks have, in quarter 3 of 2022, increased their gold cash reserves by 400 tons.
Hmm.
That's a 28% increase. Guess what's happening? So the US has been kicking the can down the road long enough, and it's time we put up or shut up. And this needs to happen. It's sad that we are asking for regulation, but I'm asking for regulation with our input. And the powers that be, like Sam and Eric, et cetera, please do what you're doing and continue to do what you're doing even further and get more of the CEOs and the CEOs involved across the world so that this can be what it's meant to be.
Well, that was very well said. I really agree so so much what you said. And I think that that's a really a good place to kind of end. That there's more stuff involved. There's more things that I'd like to get into, but I think that was a good place to end on. I think we can all agree that we need to at least pay attention, and we are. Here we are. We are talking about it, and I think that the whole CBDC thing is a whole nother can of worms, and has been talked about by you and other people, and it's just as important. It connects into this. It all sort of connects. I'm glad we kind of took a segment and we kept to this part of it. But you're right. It all kind of connects, and there's some scary things out there happening that we need to. I don't know what the word is, but we need to get off our butts in some way. And I think that this is really helpful. So, man, this has been so much fun. And I'm glad that we took the time to kind of dive into it. Like I said, this could go on and on and on, but I think we really put some points out there. And I really think that all three of us were able to add a little bit of our unique personality and what we are dealing with to the discussion. And I think that was really wonderful. So, Scott, thanks so much for coming on. This was really fun. We'll do it again. We'll get on your podcast. So I'm really excited for you to launch yours, and maybe we'll continue this discussion or something else on that, and we'll just continue just embracing it, having fun. Brianna and I on this show, we always say we're going to bring up some sticky issues, but in the end, we're always going to stay positive. We're always going to cheer on the industry and this space and everybody in it. And for the most part, gosh, the people in this community, in this space, are just damn good people. I just really enjoy the people in this space, and especially all of you. And thanks all of you who are listening. And I'll let Brianna have the last word, and then we'll cut out of here.
Yeah, you said it. Thank you all. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Dr. Scott, for a productive talk. And loved hearing both of your perspectives. Always makes me think even more. And you want to always progress in your understanding and thinking, and that happened today. And so thanks, guys. And I look forward to more.
All right, guys. So thank you again, Scott. Appreciate it. And we'll see you down the road, and everybody will see you next week, hopefully. So remember, live the decentralized life. So that might be a good thing to just end on. Thanks, guys.